Today, I will complete all 2944 stages in Sajonara Tower. Since it's pretty much straight blank gameplay, I will tell everyone a story. While I tell it, you will be able to see me jump through thousands of stages through hanging octagon square parts. Let's go. Suri, the obbiest of 1,000 jumps. Chapter 1. The Spawn Point. Suris opened his eyes and saw nothing but white light. For a moment, he thought he was floating in the sky. Then, the world loaded. Grass appeared under his feet. Clouds popped into the blue sky. Colorful platforms stretched out in front of him like a giant staircase leading into the unknown. Around him, players spawned one by one, running, jumping, falling, laughing, and disappearing in little bursts of blocks. Suris looked down at himself. He had simple clothes, messy hair, and a tiny backpack that looked too small to carry anything useful. Above his head floated his name, Suris. In front of him stood a big wooden sign. Welcome to your first obby. Jump, learn, fall, try again. Suris blinked. An obby? He whispered. He had heard of them before. Obstacle courses, jumping games, places where Roblox players tested their patience, timing, courage, and sometimes their sanity. But he had never actually completed one. The first stage looked easy. 5 square platforms floating over harmless-looking blue water. On the other side was a glowing checkpoint. Suris took one step forward, then another. He reached the edge of the first platform. Other players were already jumping ahead. Some moved like pros, bouncing from block to block without stopping. Others missed the first jump and fell into the water with a dramatic oof. Suri swallowed. It's just a jump, he told himself. He backed up, ran forward, jumped, and landed perfectly on the next platform. His eyes widened. He had done it. He jumped again, and again, and again. Soon he reached the glowing checkpoint. As soon as his foot touched it, it lit up green. A little sound played. Ding! Something inside Suris lit up too. It was small, but powerful. The feeling of progress, the feeling of getting better, the feeling of wanting to see what came next. Suri smiled, and that was the beginning. Chapter 2. The Rainbow Obby. The first real obby Suris entered was called Rainbow Sky Run. It was exactly what it sounded like, a giant rainbow road floating above the clouds. Red platforms, orange bridges, yellow ladders, green spinning bars, blue trampolines, purple slides. Everything was bright. Everything was happy. Everything looked easy. That was the trap. At first, Suris flew through the stages. He jumped over little gaps, walked across wide beams, climbed ladders, and dodged slow spinning blocks. Every checkpoint made him more confident. Stage 1, Stage 2, Stage 3, Stage 4. Maybe I'm actually good at this, Suri said. Then he reached Stage 9. It was a thin rainbow path with no walls, twisting left and right like a snake. Below it was nothing but clouds. Suris ran forward too fast. He slipped. He fell. The world rushed past him. Oof! He respawned at the checkpoint. Okay, he said. A little slower. He tried again. He fell again. He tried a third time. Fell. Fourth time. Fell. Fifth time. He stopped moving. For the first time, Suris felt the true power of an obby. Not the jumps, not the lava, not the spinning obstacles. The real enemy was frustration. A player with a golden crown jumped past him and said, "Don't rush the turn." Then the player disappeared ahead. Suri stared at the path. "Don't rush the turn." He took a breath. This time he walked. Carefully, slowly. He turned his camera before turning his body. He stopped at every corner. Step, step, step. Jump, step, turn, step. At the end, he reached the checkpoint. Ding! Suris threw his hands into the air. Yes! It was only Stage 9, but to him, it felt like winning a championship. By the end of Rainbow Sky Run, Suris had learned his first lesson. Speed is exciting, but control wins. When he reached the winner's room, there were glowing trails, speed coils, jump pads, and a big sign that said, "You won!" Suri stood there for a while, looking back at the rainbow path behind him. He had fallen many times, but he had finished, and now he wanted something harder. Chapter 3. The Classic Lava. Obby the next obby was not cute. It was called Escape the Volcano Tower. The sky was dark red. Ash floated through the air. Lava bubbled below. The platforms were black stone, cracked and glowing orange from the heat. Suri spawned beside a warning sign. "Touch the lava and you're done." He looked ahead. The first obstacle was simple. Jump over lava stripes. Suri smiled. "Easy." He ran forward and jumped. He cleared the first stripe, second stripe, third stripe. Then he got too confident. His foot touched the very edge of the lava. Oof! Back to the checkpoint. Suri stared at his blocky feet. "Okay, so edges count?" This obby was different from the rainbow one. It was not about colorful fun. It was about danger. Every jump felt serious. Every platform felt like it could be his last. There were lava jumps, disappearing rocks, falling bridges, moving stone blocks, and giant swinging axes. At stage 12, Suris faced a long bridge made of cracked tiles. A sign read, "Only some tiles are safe. Choose wisely." There were 3 paths, left, middle, right. Suris watched another player run onto the left path. The tiles disappeared beneath them. Oof! Another player tried the middle. They made it halfway before falling. Suris studied the bridge. Some tiles had slightly different cracks. Some glowed brighter than others. Maybe those were fake, or maybe they were safe. He couldn't tell, so he did what every obbyist must sometimes do. He tested. He jumped onto the right tile. Safe. Forward. Safe. Left. Gone. Oof! He respawned, but now he knew. Right. Forward. Not left. He tried again. Right. Forward. Middle. Safe. Right. Safe. Forward. Checkpoint. Ding! Suri's learned his second lesson. Every failure gives information. By the final stage, the volcano began to erupt. The tower shook. Lava rose from below. A timer appeared on screen. 60 seconds, Suris's heart raced. He jumped across falling rocks. 45 seconds. He climbed a ladder while fireballs flew past. 30 seconds. He crossed a spinning bridge. 15 seconds. The final platform was far away. Too far. Suris ran, jumped. For 1 second, he thought he would miss. Then his feet touched the edge of the platform. He climbed up. The checkpoint flashed gold. The volcano exploded behind him. Suris escaped, and when the smoke cleared, he was standing on a mountain under a sky full of stars. He whispered, "I can do harder." Chapter 4. The Troll. Obby Suris should have been careful, but he wasn't. The next game looked friendly. Super easy fun. Obby, no rage! The thumbnail showed smiling faces, puppies, and rainbows. Suris clicked play. He spawned in a pink room with cheerful music. A sign said, "This obby is very easy. Trust us." Suris immediately felt suspicious. The first jump was tiny. He jumped. The platform disappeared. Oof! He respawned. A message popped up. LOL. Suris narrowed his eyes. Oh, it's one of these. This was not a normal obby. This was a troll obby. The rules were different. The obvious path was wrong. The safe platform was deadly. The deadly-looking platform was safe. Signs lied. Arrows lied. Even checkpoints sometimes lied. At stage 3, a sign said, "Do not touch the red button." There was a giant red button in the middle of the room. Suris walked around it. The floor vanished. Oof! He respawned. He touched the red button. A bridge appeared. "Of course," he said. At stage 7, there were 2 doors. One said, "Correct door." The other said, Wrong door. Suris chose wrong door. A giant smiling face appeared and said, "You thought you were smart." Then the floor exploded. Oof! Suris laughed despite himself. The troll obby was annoying, but it was also funny. It played with his expectations. It made him think backward, then forward, then backward again. At stage 15, he reached a room with no visible exit. Just a chair, a lamp, and a tiny mouse hole in the wall. Suri stared at the mouse hole. His name was Suris after all. He walked toward it. Nothing happened. He crouched. Nothing. He jumped into it. The wall opened. A secret tunnel appeared. Inside the tunnel was a sign. Only a true Suris would find this. Suris laughed. Okay, that one was good. By the end, he learned his third lesson. Not every challenge is solved by jumping. Some are solved by thinking differently. When he reached the winner's room, instead of a trophy, there was one final sign. Congratulations, or maybe not. Suris stepped forward carefully. The sign exploded into confetti. For once, it wasn't a trap. Chapter 5. The Speed Run. Obby. After surviving trolls and lava, Suris wanted to become faster, so he joined. Speedrun Galaxy. The moment he spawned, his character began moving faster than normal. A countdown appeared. 3, 2, 1, go! Suris launched forward. The world became a blur. Neon stars, floating planets, glass roads, giant rings, speed pads, curved ramps. This obby was all about momentum. If he stopped, he lost rhythm. If he turned too sharply, he flew off the map. If he jumped too early, he missed. If he jumped too late, he crashed. At first, Suris was terrible. He overshot every platform. He smashed into walls. He jumped when he should have waited and waited when he should have jumped. But then he began to feel the rhythm. Run, jump, land, turn, jump, slide, boost, jump. He stopped thinking about every movement separately. His hands moved with the map. His camera followed the path. His eyes looked 2 platforms ahead instead of staring at his feet. At stage 6, he reached a section called Meteor Belt. Platforms appeared only for a few seconds before disappearing into space. Meteors crashed around him, shaking the screen. Suris ran. A platform appeared. He jumped. Another appeared. Jump. A meteor smashed behind him. Jump. The next platform appeared to the left. He turned. Jumped. Barely landed. The final jump was through a glowing ring. He hit it perfectly. The game launched him across the galaxy like a comet. For a few seconds, Suris was flying, not falling. Flying. He landed at the checkpoint with sparks trailing behind him. Ding! He learned his 4th lesson. Sometimes you must trust your momentum. At the end of the speedrun obby, Suris didn't feel like a beginner anymore. He felt like a real obbyist. But real obbyists don't only go fast, they also climb. Chapter 6. The Tower. Obby the Tower was huge. It reached so high into the sky that Suris couldn't see the top. Around it spun glowing rings of platforms, ladders, trusses, ropes, and beams. The game was called Tower of Patience. The name alone made Suris nervous. There were no normal stages, no easy checkpoint every few jumps, only floors. If you fell too far, you could lose minutes of progress. Suris took one step inside. The tower was quiet. No cheerful music, no funny signs, no explosions, just wind, footsteps, and distant players falling from above. The first floor was simple, ladders and small jumps. The second floor had spinning beams. The third had tight ropes. The fourth had conveyors pushing Suri sideways. He climbed slowly, carefully. Every time he reached a new floor, he looked down. The spawn point became smaller and smaller. His hands felt tense. At floor 7, he reached a thin beam wrapped around the outside of the tower. There were no walls. The sky was open. The ground was impossibly far below. Suris took one step, then another. A player ahead of him panicked and jumped too early. They fell past him, disappearing into the lower floors. Suris froze. He wanted to turn back, but there was no point. The only way was up. He moved slowly across the beam. The wind sound grew louder. His camera shook slightly. His feet stayed centered. At the end, he jumped to a ladder and climbed. Floor 8, Floor 9, Floor 10. Then came the hardest part, a spinning cylinder with tiny platforms attached to it. Suris had to jump onto one platform, ride the rotation, then jump to the next. He missed the first time. He fell 3 floors, not all the way down, but enough to hurt. He sat at the edge of Floor 7 and stared upward. For the first time in his journey, he didn't feel angry. He felt quiet. The tower was teaching him something different. Not speed, not tricks, not memory, patience. He climbed back. Floor 8, Floor 9 cylinder room. This time he waited. The platform rotated toward him. He jumped, landed, waited. Next platform, jump, landed, waited. Final platform, jump, checkpoint bell. Not a normal ding, a deep golden chime. Suris climbed the final ladder and reached the top of the tower. The clouds were below him. The sun was setting. A banner waved in the wind. Patience is a skill. Suris stood at the edge, looking across the Roblox world. Far in the distance, he could see other obbies. Cities, deserts, factories, ice mountains, haunted houses, impossible towers. His journey was bigger than he thought. Chapter 7. The Escape. Obby Suris's next adventure began in a prison cell. The game loaded with sirens blaring. Escape the Roblox prison. Suri spawned wearing an orange jumpsuit. A guard NPC walked back and forth outside the bars. A vent cover sparkled above the toilet. Suris smiled. Classic! He climbed onto the toilet, jumped into the vent, and crawled through a dark tunnel. This obby was different because it felt like a story inside the story. Suris wasn't just jumping platforms, he was escaping. He dropped into a laundry room, dodged lasers, climbed through pipes, and crossed a cafeteria where giant spilled soup puddles acted like lava. Then he reached the yard. Players were running everywhere. Spotlights swept across the grass. If the light touched you, you got teleported back to jail. Suris hid behind crates. The spotlight passed. He ran, hid behind a wall. Another spotlight passed. He ran again. At the fence, he found wire cutters. But the moment he grabbed them, an alarm went off. Intruder escaping! The gate opened to a sewer tunnel. Suris jumped down. The sewer was full of green, toxic sludge. Pipes dripped from above. Moving platforms floated across the liquid. Halfway through, Suris saw another player stuck on a jump. They kept falling into the sludge. Suris waited. Jump when the platform starts coming toward you, he said. The player tried, missed, tried again, landed. They both continued together. For the first time, Suris wasn't only completing the obby, he was helping someone else complete it too. At the final stage, they stole a helicopter from the prison roof. Suris jumped into the pilot seat, even though the helicopter only moved along a scripted path. The prison exploded behind them in a dramatic cutscene. The other player typed, "Tai." Suris typed back, "GG." He learned his 5th lesson. An obby can be more fun when someone else makes it through because of you. Chapter 8. The Ice Obby. Not all worlds were warm. The next obby was called Frozen Peak Challenge. Suris spawned at the bottom of a snowy mountain. The wind howled. Snowflakes covered the screen. The platforms were icy blue and slippery. He took one step and slid forward. Oh no! Ice obbies were strange. Landing wasn't enough. You had to control the slide after landing. Every movement carried extra distance. The first few jumps were manageable. Then came the frozen lake. Small ice blocks floated across freezing water. Suris jumped to the first one and immediately slid toward the edge. He panicked and pressed backward too hard. He slid off the other side. Oof! He respawned. This time he landed and tapped backward gently. Still slid, but less. Again, better. Again, better. The mountain grew steeper. Suris climbed icy ladders, crossed snow bridges, avoided rolling snowballs, and jumped between icicles hanging over cliffs. At one point, he entered a cave filled with crystal platforms. The crystals reflected his character like mirrors. Some reflections were fake paths. Some platforms were invisible unless seen in the mirror. Suris slowed down. He watched the reflections. A platform that looked empty in front of him appeared in the mirror. He jumped, landed on invisible glass. Another jump, another invisible platform. At the end of the cave, he reached a campfire checkpoint. The fire glowed orange against the blue ice. Suris stood near it for a moment, feeling like he had truly crossed a dangerous mountain. Near the summit, a blizzard began. The wind pushed him sideways while he crossed narrow platforms. Suris leaned against it, adjusting every jump. The final stage was a giant ice slope. A sign read, "Slide to the finish. Do not jump too early." Suris slid down. Faster, faster, faster. A huge gap appeared at the bottom. He waited, waited. The edge came closer. Now, he jumped. He flew across the gap and landed in soft snow beside a glowing flag. Summit reached. He learned his sixth lesson. Control does not always mean stopping. Sometimes it means steering through the slide. Chapter 9. The desert, Abi after ice came heat. Suris entered. Temple of the Golden Abi. He spawned in a desert under a burning sun. Sand stretched in every direction. Ahead stood an ancient pyramid with giant stone doors. A message appeared. Find the lost checkpoint crystal. This was not only an Abi, it was an adventure Abi. Suris crossed sinking sand blocks, jumped over scorpion pits, climbed sandstone towers, and avoided rolling boulders. Inside the pyramid, the air turned dark and golden. Torches lit the walls. Ancient Roblox faces were carved into stone. The first room had a puzzle, 4 buttons, a sign, "Only the path of patience opens the door." Suris remembered the tower. Patience. He didn't press every button randomly. Instead, he watched the room. Each button had a symbol above it: sun, moon, star, and flame. On the wall was a painting: sunrise, noon, sunset, night, sun, flame, star, moon. He pressed them in order. The door opened. Inside was a long hallway with darts shooting from the walls. Suris watched the pattern. Left, right, left, left, pause, right. He moved during the pauses and made it through. Then came the treasure room. At the center floated the checkpoint crystal, but the floor was covered in pressure plates. Suris stepped carefully. One plate clicked. Spikes rose behind him. He ran. The temple began collapsing. Blocks fell from the ceiling. Sand poured into the room. The exit was closing. Suris grabbed the crystal. A golden shockwave blasted through the pyramid, opening a hidden staircase. He climbed as the entire structure shook. At the top, he jumped through the closing door at the last second and rolled onto the sand outside. Behind him, the pyramid sank halfway into the desert. Suris held the crystal up. It glowed brightly, then shrank into a badge on his chest. He learned his 7th lesson. The best hobbyists observe before they move. Chapter 10. The City Parkour. Abi Suris had jumped through skies, towers, prisons, mountains, and temples. Now he entered the city. Rooftop rush parkour. This obby was built across skyscrapers at night. Neon signs flashed. Cars moved far below. Rain fell lightly on the rooftops. This was not a colorful beginner obby. It felt fast, smooth, and cinematic. Suri spawned on a rooftop beside a glowing arrow. Reached the radio tower. He ran across vents, jumped over alleys, climbed fire escapes, bounced off billboards, slid under pipes, and leapt across rooftops. The city felt alive. Steam came from vents. Windows glowed. Helicopters flew past. Every jump felt like a movie scene. At one point, Surius had to wall hop between two buildings. He jumped from one wall to the other, climbing upward with perfect timing. He failed many times. The wall hop was difficult because it demanded rhythm and camera control. Too much movement and he missed. Too little and he fell. Surius remembered everything he had learned. Control from the rainbow obby. Information from the lava obby. Thinking differently from the troll obby. Momentum from the speedrun. Patience from the tower. Helping from the prison. Steering from the ice. Observation from the temple. He tried again. Jump, turn, jump, turn, jump, turn. He reached the top. The rain stopped. The radio tower stood ahead, glowing red against the night sky. The final path was a crane arm stretching over the city. It was thin, very thin. Suri stepped onto it. Wind pushed him. Lightning flashed. For a second, he saw the entire city below. He kept moving. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. At the end of the crane, he jumped to the radio tower ladder and climbed. At the top was a button. Broadcast complete. Suri's pressed it. Every neon sign in the city changed to one word. Surius, for the first time, he felt famous. Not because everyone knew him, but because he knew himself. He had become better. Chapter 11. The Mega Fun Obby. Then came something huge. Mega Fun Obby. 1,000 stages. Surius laughed when he saw the title. 1,000? He almost left, but then he thought, 1 stage at a time. Mega obbies were strange. They weren't always the hardest, but they tested endurance. Color after color, jump after jump, spinner after spinner, ladder after ladder. Stage 1 was easy. Stage 10 was easy. Stage 50 was still easy. Stage 100 felt far. Stage 200 felt endless. Stage 300 made Surius tired. The danger of a mega obby was not one impossible jump. It was boredom. It was losing focus. It was thinking, I can do this automatically. Then walking straight into a kill brick. At stage 347, Surius fell on a simple jump he had done 100 times before. He stared at the screen. How did I miss that? Because he wasn't paying attention. From then on, Surius created little goals. Reach stage 400, then 450, then 500. Every 100 stages, he took a moment to look back. The path behind him stretched so far that it vanished into the skybox. At stage 600, the obby changed themes. Candy World, Chocolate Rivers, Gummy Platforms, Candy Cane Ladders. At stage 700, it became space, asteroids, lasers, moon jumps. At stage 800, it became a haunted mansion, ghost platforms, invisible stairs, creepy music. At stage 900, it became pure white. No decorations, no music, just platforms, jumps, and silence. The last 100 stages were not flashy. They were clean, simple, precise. Suri realized that after all the themes, all the colors, all the tricks, the heart of an obby was still the same. A player, a jump, a landing. At stage 999, there was one final platform. Small, far. Surius ran, jumped. For a moment, everything slowed down. He landed. Stage 1000. A huge golden door opened. Inside was a winner's room bigger than any he had seen before. Fireworks exploded. Music played. A giant statue of a Roblox character held a sign. You did not quit. Surius smiled. That was the real victory. He learned his 8th lesson. Long journeys are completed one small stage at a time. Chapter 12. The difficulty chart. One day, Surius found a game that looked simple. No story, no volcano, no prison, no city, just a tall wall of colors, green at the bottom, yellow above it, orange, red, purple, black. The title, Difficulty Chart. Obby. A sign explained, every section gets harder. Stop whenever you want. Suris looked up. The top was barely visible. He began in easy, simple jumps, wide platforms, slow spinners, then medium, smaller platforms, longer jumps, faster timing, then hard, thin beams, wraparounds, ladder flicks, precise corner jumps. Suri started falling more, a lot more. At first he got frustrated, then he realized something. The difficulty chart was honest. It didn't trick him, it didn't pretend to be easy. It simply showed him where his skill ended and asked, "Do you want to grow?" At difficult, Suris faced a wraparound jump. He had to jump around the side of a wall and land on a platform he couldn't see directly. He missed. Again, again, again. He tried for 10 minutes, then 20. Then he almost gave up, but every attempt got a little closer. At first, he didn't even touch the platform. Then, he touched it, but slipped. Then he landed for half a second. Then finally, he landed. He froze. He didn't celebrate immediately because he was afraid to move. Then he carefully walked to the checkpoint. Ding! Suris shouted so loud that if Roblox characters could hear through screens, the whole server would have heard him. The next section was intense. He did not complete it that day, or the next, but that was okay. The difficulty chart taught him something important. You do not need to beat the whole mountain today to become stronger. You only need to climb higher than yesterday. Chapter 13. The Troll Returns. After all his serious training, Suris wanted something funny again, so he joined. Definitely not a troll. Obby 2. The spawn room had a sign. This obby contains 0 trolls. Suri sighed. That's the biggest lie I've ever seen. This troll obby was smarter than the first one. It knew players expected tricks, so it sometimes made the obvious path correct just to confuse them. At stage 1, the red kill bricks were actually deadly. Suris avoided them. Good. At stage 2, the red kill bricks were safe. He touched one carefully. Good. At stage 3, half were deadly and half were safe. He laughed. The game was trying to get inside his head. At one point, there was a giant sign. The correct path is invisible. Suri searched for invisible platforms for 5 minutes. Nothing. Then he noticed the sign itself had collision. He jumped onto the sign, climbed over it, and found the exit behind the wall. Another room had a button labeled, "Press to win." Suris ignored it. Nothing happened. He pressed it. The room exploded. Oof! He respawned and noticed a tiny button behind spawn labeled, "Actually press to win." He pressed that. A bridge appeared. The best troll came near the end. Suris reached a long hallway with arrows pointing forward. At the end was a glowing checkpoint. He walked toward it slowly. Too easy. He checked the walls. Nothing. Checked the ceiling. Nothing. Checked the floor. Nothing. Finally, he touched the checkpoint. It turned red. A message appeared. Wrong checkpoint. Then he got teleported backward to the beginning. Suri stared. Then he laughed harder than he had laughed in any obby. The real checkpoint was hidden behind the starting area. He found it by walking backward. When he finally reached the end, a giant troll face appeared and said, "You have been promoted from victim to survivor." Suris bowed dramatically. He had learned not only how to jump, but how to laugh at failure. Chapter 14. The Haunted. Obby. The next obby began with thunder. Escape the haunted manor. Suri spawned outside a dark mansion. Rain poured from the sky. The front door opened by itself. Inside, the floorboards creaked. Portraits watched him. Candles flickered. Somewhere upstairs, a piano played one note at a time. This obby was not the hardest physically, but it was scary. Suris walked through a hallway where the walls seemed to stretch longer and longer. Platforms appeared only when lightning flashed. If he moved too quickly in the dark, he fell. In the library, books flew from shelves. Suris had to jump across floating books while avoiding ghost hands reaching from below. In the dining room, chairs slid across the floor like traps. In the basement, the floor was covered in black fog. Only tiny glowing skulls marked safe spots. At one point, Suris heard footsteps behind him. He turned. Nothing. He kept moving. The footsteps continued. Then a ghost NPC rushed toward him. Suris panicked and ran straight into a wall. Oof! He respawned and laughed nervously. Okay, that got me. The final stage was the attic. A giant clock ticked loudly. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Every tick made platforms appear. Every tock made them disappear. Suris had to jump in rhythm with the clock. Tick, jump, tock, wait. Tick, jump, tock, wait. The ghost chased him from behind. Tick, jump, tock, wait. Tick, jump. Final platform. He dove through a window and landed outside as the sun rose. The haunted mansion vanished behind him. A badge appeared. Fear escaped. Suris learned, courage is not being unafraid. Courage is jumping while afraid. Chapter 15. The Water. Obby. Next came water. Aqua Park. Obby, bright blue slides, swimming pools, floating tubes, waterfalls, diving boards, and underwater tunnels. At first, it felt relaxing. Then, Suris reached the underwater maze. Swimming controls felt different. Movement was floaty. Jumps were replaced with upward swimming. There were air bubbles that acted like checkpoints, but if Suris stayed underwater too long without touching one, he got sent back. He swam through coral tunnels, dodged jellyfish, avoided whirlpools, and used water currents to launch himself upward. The hardest part was a waterfall climb. Platforms moved up and down inside falling water. The water pushed Suris backward, making every jump slippery and strange. He failed many times. Then he realized the water had rhythm. Strong push, weak push, strong push, weak push. He jumped during the weak push. Slowly, he climbed. At the top was a giant diving board leading into a glowing pool below. A sign said, "Trust the fall." Suris jumped. He fell through rings of water, through clouds of mist, past rainbow lights, and into the pool. Instead of oofing, he was launched into the sky by a geyser. He landed on the finish island. He learned, not every fall is failure. Some falls are part of the path. Chapter 16. The Factory. Obby. The factory was loud. Escape the robot factory machine slammed. Gears turned. Conveyor belts moved in every direction. Red lasers scanned the floor. Suris spawned beside broken robots and warning signs. This Obby was mechanical. Everything moved with timing. Conveyors pushed him left. Crushers smashed down every few seconds. Gears spun like deadly wheels. Lasers turned on and off. At stage 5, Suris had to cross 3 conveyor belts moving in opposite directions while jumping over laser lines. He tried rushing, failed. He tried stopping, failed. Then he moved diagonally, letting the conveyors carry him just enough while correcting his direction. It worked. In the assembly room, robot arms grabbed platforms and moved them around. Suris had to jump onto a platform, ride it through the air, then jump away before it was crushed. At the final section, a giant robot boss activated. It wasn't a fighting game, but the robot created Obby attacks. Laser grids, shockwave jumps, falling metal blocks. Suris dodged, jumped, climbed, and reached the shutdown button on top of the robot's head. He slammed it. The robot froze. The factory lights turned green. Machines stopped. A door opened. Suris walked out into daylight. He learned, timing can turn chaos into a pattern. The end. Here's some bonus content. The code is 2944. Walk on the path, avoid the kill bricks. Open the jail cell with the lever. We can only cross the door if we liked the game and joined the group. Go sideways with shift lock to go through the bars. Quickly jump over kill bricks and cross the fading parts. By using the rocket, we skip just until the rainbow section. That would be cheating, though. GG! Thanks for watching. watching. Like and subscribe for more.